Hi, this is Ed back again. As you can see, or at least playing with some new tiles there for the beginning. Yours sincerely, Clown World. What do you think? Thank you to everyone that supports my channel on Patreon and Subscribestar. Let's just get right into it here. So, evidence that the photograph of Mitch McConnell, which is floating around, is indeed fake. Okay, so this image, which was not released via Mitch McConnell's estate or anything like that, their family, has been circled everywhere. As you can see there from the screenshot, you see it circulated in localmemphis.com, all around Facebook. Not that that matters, they'll circulate anything. The Independent circulating this photograph, and indeed other places as well. Axios, as you can see there, circulating this particular photograph of Mitch McConnell, which you can see here. Now, researchers found anomalies in the newspaper that Mitch McConnell was holding. According to them, why they think it's fake, there is many anomalies within the newspaper itself. Before I get to that, just noting that someone, here we'll give the person, the Lee files, they had a photograph, which was that photograph there. They fed this into Gawk, and Gawk said that modern AI-generated images can be virtually indistinguishable from real ones, so visuals alone really allow definitive proof. This circulating photograph or photo of Mitch McConnell with the woman and newspaper, his wife, is AI-generated. OpenAI's verification tool detected Google's SynthID watermark on matching versions of the image. What this means is Google has this, similar to the way that they mark when you print stuff out, there's invisible markings on your paper, which you are not aware of, and this has been used in order to track down individuals that have sent letters into places. Okay. Just like your printer does that, or certain things, I think libraries do that with, depending upon what's being printed as well, you know, where people go to get things mass printed and stuff, or a lot of copies of stuff, has this invisible ID. The same thing is in AI generated images, which apparently, according to Gawk, was picked up here using OpenAI's verification tool, which detected Google's synthwave, or sorry, I should say SynthID watermark on matching versions of the image. Fact checkers, Snopes, Cincinnati Enquirer, etc. confirmed it as fake, citing inconsistencies like warped details and unnatural elements. No authentic hospital photo like this has been released. Mitch McConnell has been hospitalized since June the 14th, but this image is fabricated according to Gawk. Researchers also pointed out, and you always have to do other research, that in their opinion, the newspaper itself is fake. They point to certain types of anomalies, which you can have a look at on screen. Now, in the photograph itself, it says that there is like disappearing lines where you can clearly see a delineating line there. Obviously, in reality, light, exposure, and things like that can change what the camera picks up. Just playing devil's advocate, if a camera was picking up a photograph of that, obviously light can disturb that. But there are other anomalies here. As you can see, what is this diamond shape anomaly there, as well as a whole other bunch of anomalies. People pointing out all these things that seem not to be in the actual paper, which Mitch McConnell was hand holding. And this is a famous proof of life thing where people will hold a current newspaper to say, hey, I am alive because this newspaper only came out at this date. Obviously, that's no longer proof of anything, right? So the reason why people believe that Mitch McConnell might be dead, or at least comatose, and that he's no longer coherent, is because there's certain problems with him that happening to him right now, just in the latitudes of grey. Obviously, I hope everybody gets better, whoever they are, right? Hope that they get the medical attention they need. But the reality is this creates problems for the Republicans. And the problems are created because the seat that he holds, so to speak, would be empty if he was declared dead or incapacitated at this particular stage, which means that people like Thomas Massie could potentially challenge the actual seat. This is what I've heard. I don't exactly know the intricacies of this, but certain other parties could challenge. Now, you know that they spent $30 million or $27 million unseating Thomas Massie, right? This was AIPAC, who celebrated when he was unseated, and who is going to get his seat is basically a nobody that no one knows anything about. So money, if it is just money, is capable of doing these things if you just push enough of it. And this is really peanuts in comparison to the types of things that can be achieved if you have somebody that'll vote on whatever you want. You're talking about multi-billion-dollar arms contracts. Now they're talking about the merging, of course, with the United States military and intelligence apparatus with Mossad and the Israeli apparatus, so on and so forth. These are the things that could be worth trillions of dollars to, let's say, Israel in terms of contracts, weapon contracts now, that will be given over to possibly Israeli firms there that are dealing in intelligence, data gathering. You know, the world's VPNs go through Israel. So these contracts are an automatic switch if you literally are embedded, as well as all the other advantageous stuff and embedding with the US military and intelligence sharing and so on and so forth. Believe it or not, but classically, according to John Kiriakou and others, Mossad and the CIA have a contentious relationship, right? John Kiriakou said that they consistently, every time the Israelis visited, they consistently had to sweep for listening devices. Gifts were given to them. They had listening devices in it. And it seems like this was, a continuous problem. So those are the things that could be achieved. So Mitch McConnell, and keeping him alive, so to speak, in the media, and not pronouncing him comatose or dead. I don't know if he is, by the way, because you also have advantages in order to put out photos like this and push them around to create this kind of limited hangout, which sweeps up resources, and then Mitch McConnell comes wheeled out. People are talking about mask technology, possibly, if that happens. People are talking about all kinds of things. But the thing is, just having him there, if he is comatose and, let's say, dead or deceased, is not advantageous at this particular stage, right? This is a very bad thing to happen, and his seat could be challenged in numerous different ways. So the idea is to prolong it as long as possible that he's around, and this will stop. They'll be able to replace him in a more conventional manner, I guess, without these other people. Perhaps Thomas Massie was the name that was thrown out, potentially challenging his seat there. Again, I don't know exactly the intricacies of that, but that's what people are talking about. So you have Gork stating that Google's SynthID or whatever is embedded in the actual photograph itself, which points to it being fraudulent, AI, so on and so forth. And you have all the researchers pointing to all the anomalies within the photograph. Yet it was shared around, right? It was shared extensively around by mainstream media, sharing a completely fabricated image. There's also these kinds of things which people are talking about, and this is Mitch McConnell here being placed into an ambulance. There's a number of things. First of all, they state, this is the claim, that when the ambulance arrived, there were no lights circulating, right? Now remember, Mitch McConnell was unwell for a long time. I mean, I've been reporting, everyone's been reporting on his ill health for years, okay? Sometimes he seems to be like somebody that's been held up with pieces of string. He's clearly very ill even years ago. Now, because of that, and because he's a very important person, a political person, he probably has and this is all paid for, okay, as part of the package of being someone like Mitch McConnell in terms of healthcare, he has probably got a nurse in the house. He has probably even maybe got a doctor in the house, okay? He's a very wealthy person. Now, think of this. The ambulance, when that shows up, doesn't have the lights on, according to people, right? It does not have the lights on at all. And then when they place him in the ambulance, they seem to be doing this casual manner, and they just throw this sheet over top of him. Let's have a look at the video here. So this was a very bad actual vantage point. They should have gone around the car at least. But here they are putting him into the back of the car, which you can see there. And his feet are just there, like that. And there doesn't seem to be, what I mean is this massive urgency for someone in his position. Think of that. There's no urgency. Why is that? Well, if he has a doctor on the scene, they could be pronouncing him dead, and then they're calling the ambulance. So the ambulance isn't exactly speeding over there, right? It's just, it knows that he's been pronounced. He's been called as dead. He has no pulse. Maybe if his body is even cold, right? Remember, he was found collapsed. If you're feeling his body and it's stone cold and he's been dead for, I don't know, a few hours or something, or an hour, maybe someone went out somewhere and didn't notice, you get his pulse and he's dead, the ambulance isn't rushing over there. This just seems very strange. Of course, I do not know if he is deceased. Some people are saying if he isn't deceased and he comes back, or he is deceased and you have another Mitch McConnell come back, it could be just somebody using mask technology, which they can use these days. It's not even a problem. I mean, years ago that would have sounded ridiculous, right? So some people are posting some videos, probably not in the best, what you call bad form or whatever, but nonetheless, people are posting pictures like this and saying, here is a new picture of him, updated, and of course somebody has fed this into, an AI, and they've given it another hand, right, as you can see there, 2 hands, 4 hands, and an extra hand. It's kind of quite, obviously it's this fabricated photograph, but people were sharing, making fun of the other AI image, which was the one that was circulated. To be clear, this one was not circulated. This is something that people came up with as a joke, I guess it was, on the other image. The thing about this is it does show you how powerful the technology is. I mean, look at it. And we know this is 100% fraudulent because it's got another arm there, right? Look how easily that is inserted and everything. It's quite extraordinary. It is what it is. Some other people, of course, were posting this around. They're saying this is proof of life. Let's take a look here.
Honey, show them you're okay. I told you he was okay.
So quite interesting there, of course. A lot of people are having a bit of fun there, Now, a lot of other people have passed away recently. Some big names, and we'll talk about Lindsey Graham a bit later on. But Sam Neill recently passed away. He was not well for the last few years. He had cancer, is battling cancer, of course. Apparently he was in complete remission, but he passed away at 78. Now, he looked good for 78 actually, but obviously he wasn't well. So John Rappaport passed away as well. Now he was, I believe, 88 years old, and just throwing this in very quickly, I remember watching his reports for many years back in the days. He would appear on numerous different programs. Of course, as you get older, we haven't seen him in a number of years. He was around 88. I think he was born 1939. I could be mistaken because I looked it up the other day when he passed, or yesterday. I heard about how he passed. And I think he was 88 years old. So he lived a decent life there. And of course, he was someone that was down the rabbit hole doing all these reports for many years. And this video here, you can watch it on Dan Dix's Twitter. He's interviewing David Icke back in the early 90s or mid 90s. So rest in peace to John. Next we have the possible nuclear incident. So what is happening here on the possible nuclear incident? Well, Russia Today posted this, and some people say Russia Today is propaganda. Every mainstream news, every news is propaganda. But here you have Russia Today saying that there was a 3.6 magnitude earthquake which struck northeast Iran amid ongoing US bombings across the country. Now that is a huge earthquake. Some people are saying, or at least Russia Today was implying, it was a nuclear bomb. So here you have their video, which is a nuclear bomb going off, right? It's just some archival footage of a nuclear bomb, but they are suggesting that there are possible tactical nukes or something used. Now, in my opinion, and I've said this before, I don't actually believe 100% the nuclear weapons are real. I don't know if they are real. They might be or possibly real, but I do have doubt in my mind after watching a lot of videos of nuclear weapons going off and watching cars disappear or these things disappear. After thinking about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I do wonder if what happened is the Allies and the Americans, just what they did is they dropped huge amounts of explosives, firebombed the place as they firebombed a lot of Japan, and they went with the narrative that this was a new type of weapon. What would you gain out of that? Everything. You would have people chasing technology that didn't exist. You'd have every single country doing it. You would have North Korea saying they have it, but everyone probably says, well, did they just fake it underground? Can they do that? Look what happened after COVID, right? Look what happened with the vaccine. They can 100%, they have the capabilities to do that. And that's out in the open, right? That's completely out in the open. You weren't even allowed to know what was inside that technology, but they can do anything they want. They are the writers of narratives. And I never thought they had the power to do stuff like that, but they absolutely have the power to rewrite history, to make people believe in things that never existed, to create entire art movements such as modern art, as referencing the Independent article from 1994, as I've mentioned before, where the CIA paid off gallery owners in order to manufacture a Western art movement, which is largely nihilistic, because in Russia they had classical art. So here you have what some people are saying was a nuclear weapon. For reference purposes, you can see some references to earthquake size in terms of magnitude. This particular one would be equivalent to Hiroshima, right? Hiroshima, in terms of the size of the explosion would be a 3.5 to 4 local shake, and you can see other variants there from nuclear weapons, right? By the way, they always say that the modern nuclear weapons are like 10,000 Hiroshimas or Hiroshimas or whatever, right? But the earthquakes aren't like 10,000 times more. Doesn't energy, if you have an amount of energy and you're saying it's a factor of whatever or times whatever, doesn't that also increase the amount of energy that's exerted into the environment so that load would increase the earthquake? I don't know. I'm just asking. I'm not a physicist. But you jump from a 3.5 here in Hiroshima to a large strategic warhead with a magnitude of 6.0. By the way, what's a tactical nuke? It's a nuclear weapon. You're using basically atomic weapons, what they used to call atomic weapons back in the day. But they gave it a new facelift, right? Call it nuclear, like nuclear energy. But they're using atomic bombs, right? After Dr. Strangelove, the idea of the atomic bomb and things like that obviously seemed the domain of a madman. So here is the clip of Donald Trump talking about using nuclear weapons. Or you can say that maybe it's a slip of the tongue. But would he do something like this? All the analysts are saying not only would he do it, but he wants to do it because it's his personality. He wants to be the first seen as the tough guy that used nuclear weapons. Remember, he is a narcissist. If you are a narcissist, if you have narcissistic personality disorder, you are a psychopath. Right? You are basically a psychopath. I mean, he thinks in terms of architecture of power, how good his golf game is, how big the sign is, how big the building is, you know, how he can take the oil. He can take the oil because he's powerful. How he can take the minerals from Greenland. These are the things he talks about. He talks in a language which is, in a lot of different ways, extremely rare, right? As Penn Jillette said, Donald Trump is the only person he knows that never makes a joke. And Penn Jillette worked on the TV show The Apprentice for Donald Trump. And he said Donald Trump's the only person he knows that never makes a joke, ever. Like an actual joke, never tells a joke and never laughs at a joke. Every time you see him say something where he's laughing, it's at other people's expense or how he's talking about how powerful he is. It's a dopamine exchange. Let's listen to this here, though.
He's done a good job. If I wasn't around, or if Bibi wasn't around, especially the combination, Israel would not exist today. We wouldn't have hit him with the B-2 bombers. You know, they were going to have a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks. Had I not hit him with a nuclear, within 2 to 4 weeks, they would have.
So he says there, and that's the extent of the clip, he says, they would have had a nuclear weapon if I didn't hit them with the B-2 bombers and the nuclear. Now some people, I don't know why there's people that are so giving. They say, oh, you know, forgive him for this. He's misspoken for that. Why? He doesn't deserve any type of benefit of the doubt at all. He deserves no benefit of the doubt, but continuously every single pundit always gives him the benefit of the doubt. But there he's talking about using nuclear weapons. Now, if you ask me honestly, I would say the thing about a nuclear weapon is if they are real, you would expect the readings to be all over the region. There would be a lot of radioactive readings. Now, the power plant, or the nuclear, one of Iran's nuclear power plants, was apparently hit recently. Now, if the nuclear power plant was hit, it's going to create, if there is a reactor or a meltdown, when you mean hit, I don't know if the key infrastructure was hit or they dropped the missile like 500 yards away, or, you know, like X amount of meters away from the plant itself, because they'd have to be crazy in order to directly hit the plant and cause a meltdown. Now, if there was a nuclear weapon go off, there's all kinds of detectors that apparently can measure the radioactive signatures, right, that come out from a nuclear weapon. Some people say that's what cattle mutilations are. If you're going to take the conventional approach, what happened is the nuclear energy in the United States is under huge classification, right? Remember that. Nuclear energy, and this as its own department under the super classifications, right? They have their own investigators, their own whatever. That's how tied up it is. Now, if it's all a lie, that completely makes sense. And if it's the truth, maybe it makes sense as well. But you're not really allowed to know anything about the technology. Now, some people say back in the cattle mutilation days, what actually was happening, because they would see black helicopters. Remember how you'd see black helicopters all the time? There was some very anomalous accounts. But what would happen is there'd be a mutilation of cattle which would coincide with a black helicopter. People saying that they were extracting their tongues and certain other parts of the body, because what they were doing is they were tracking how far the fallout went from the nuclear test programs across the United States, and they're using ranches and clandestine methods in order to do this. They just go and take a cow and rip it out. They weren't out there to ask anything. But the fact is they would not even have to do that, which was the counter, because they could just go straight to the ranchers and demand, basically, as a matter of like national security or whatever, that they take part in a certain, harvesting of organs in order to measure whatever they wanted, right? But that would create a narrative. Donald Trump has also stated recently that they're going to be the new guardian angels of the strait and will be reimbursed for it, he says. They're going to take control of it. It's not theirs either, but he's going to take control of it, like he says about Greenland, and he's just going to have it now. I mean, this is just modern day piracy. You go to Venezuela and say, well, we don't like your contracts here, we're just going to kidnap your leader, and then we're going to just take the oil. It's just piracy. Now, maybe the piracy is beneficial if you live in the West. It is in a way, because people would rather have the Americans running oil than they would Venezuela. As an ally to New Zealand, it's more beneficial to New Zealand. But in terms of general moral structures, this is just nothing but piracy. It's like flying around, like old-fashioned piracy, like, you just hijacked a load of, textile stuff coming from wherever, and now you're gonna take that and you dump it in Port Royal and just hawk it off to whoever, right? Or a bunch of some kind of shipment of copper or something, or whatever the case is. I mean, that's what it is. It's just piracy. He's out of control, okay? Like, literally, he is out of control. The world is insane since his second term. Well, actually, his first term was insane as well, but there was all this cloud of Russiagate and things of that nature, which was a conspiracy against him. Strangely enough, they said he worked for a foreign government, but they just got the government wrong. I don't know, maybe that's why the CIA was after him so much. Because what does he do? Bring the world to the brink of World War III pretty rapidly. And he won't even walk away from it. He's incapable, due to his personality, of ever walking away from what's happening out there. He has to be seen as winning. Even when he signs basically a surrender with the memorandum of understanding he had there, or the MOU with Iran, even when it's a surrender document, he still can't in the public eye just like walk away. He has to then make all these grandiose fictional statements and start insulting everybody like he's the one walking away from the win. He cannot be seen as a loser. And other evidences, people say, very strangely, here's New York Prepper here, just showing you some of the accounts. And so here is what they're saying as messages from basically, actually I didn't get the other half of it, which was the doomsday. Oh, here it is here. It says 3 US nuclear codes back to back. So he's saying those are nuclear codes back to back. At least they get a human being to read them. It sounded like a human being was reading them, and not just some kind of like AI message or whatever. So also the Russian doomsday plane was sent over to Iran and was doing circles. Why would that be happening? Well, I don't know a lot about it. But looking into it, war coordination, US is actively striking Iran military targets. Russia needs secure jam-proof comms with Tehran if they coordinate intelligence, resupply and strategic planning. So the plane is a pipeline for secure communications. Diplomatic signaling, sending the Kremlin's own command aircraft is a deliberate show. We're in this with Iran. Contingency planning. If the conflict escalates, the Strait of Hormuz closure, wider war, Russia wants a hardened comms node on the ground. Precedent. They did the same exact flight in February 2026 during the previous crisis peak. So there you have the doomsday plane, Russians' doomsday plane flying around in circles. Was sent over there. People say there's threats against Donald Trump's life and the Iranians are plotting to assassinate him. Well, the United States assassinated their entire leadership, but apparently this information is questionable. I don't know if it's true or false. Here is Professor Stephen Hanke, and he's professor at Johns Hopkins, a senior economist. So I think that's Johns Hopkins School, could be mistaken, maybe it's a think tank. So he stated, or just a summary here, apparently he states he is not a big believer in the assassination, expresses deep criticism regarding the source and narratives of these reports, suggesting that Netanyahu and the Mossad might be driving this story to manipulate Trump and influence his stance on the region. Not very hard to do that at all. You just do it through the news cycle. All he consumes apparently is CNN, Fox News, and some other news networks. Right? That's all he looks at. That's his worldview. So very easy to manipulate him. You just attack his ego. In fact, they could probably just have some war hawks on there, on CNN, because they're all in concert. They're fine with the war over there. There might be some criticism here and there, but largely CNN or whatever side of the left-right paradigm are fine with what's happening. They're all pro-Iran war for the most part. So they could have some hawks on there that say, oh, Trump has been seen as weak. He's not doing anything. He's weak. He looks like a coward and a loser. Except that couch it better. And that would really get in his mind. They know all this. They have whole entire think tanks that work with psychologists figuring out how to manipulate his thinking, which would be very easy to manipulate his thinking because he has this narcissistic personality disorder. But there you are, people are not believing the assassination stuff. There's an ex-CIA officer here say Russians are willing to basically take as much suffering as they need, incalculable suffering. During World War II, Soviet troops reportedly failed to cross a minefield, so they joined hands and walked across and blew themselves to pieces. Look, if you look through Russian history and writing, Dostoevsky, Gogol, whatever his name is, the person who wrote Dead Souls, is that how you say his name? I bet it's been many years since I have read that book. That's all about suffering. Everything's about suffering. I mean, all of it. It's like part of their culture is literally suffering and talking about how miserable the world is. That is a lot of their culture. And maybe this is a lot of this stemmed. Obviously, you can see the difference between, the difference in the history of Russia. It's a very old country when it was controlled by equivalent of royalty, okay, before they were all chased out and assassinated and killed and whatever the case is. There's this grandiose architecture and beautiful things and stuff like that, classical art, and then of course communism, things changed and became more of a lot of things changed, but I mean, they're used to suffering, so I don't think anything's really going to change. The only thing that really changed Russian perspective was opening it up to the West, opening it up to Western culture, but I don't know, what do we have to export anymore? Since the subversion operations in the West and to do with music, artificially pumped up, it looks like rap was artificially pumped up now with the USAID, calling it quits, and now for the last 2 years since it's shut down, there's no rap songs in the top tune charts. How do you do that? You buy up all the records. They buy up all the records. They buy up all the space. They artificially prop it up and promote it. with money in order to create a psyop. Well, since all this stuff, since the infection of the modern movie industry, where everything is a demoralization campaign on purpose by design in order to demoralize society, where's that money coming from? I don't even think they could right that ship if they fired everyone and got all new staff, because now it's rolling on in terms of an ideology. An ideology, if you look in Britain, an ideology is packed full of Doctor Who, and apparently that's what destroyed it. They stopped talking about, and I'm not an expert on Doctor Who, this is what other people say, they stopped talking about actual science fiction, funny Doctor Who-like shows in the early 2000s to talking about like gender theory, right? Transgender theory, grievance study fields, right? They'll sneak it into the narrative, or they'll put it in the narrative, and no one wants to watch that. And why would I want to watch that? I want to watch a story that takes me away. Tolkien said, one of the most important things to him, his mission was he had a duty of helping people escape. I look at it as that as well, like escape to another world. Escape in terms of entertainment. Okay, so here we are at Lindsey Graham. So here is what Caitlin Johnson posted on the 12th, hearing about the statement from the office of Senator Lindsey Graham passing away. She posted this here: from the Wizard of Oz. Good taste in a movie, I should say, and of course this is Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead.
The wicked old witch at last is dead. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Witch, oh witch, the wicked witch. Ding dong, the wicked witch is dead. Wake up, you sleepy head. Have you rise out of bed? Wake up, the wicked witch is dead. The wicked.
Some people say that Lindsey Graham was in the factory when it was bombed by the Russians, because the exact same factory he was in or visiting just hours before was bombed, was a drone factory, and he died in it. And in order to recalculate the narrative, reconfigure the narrative, they actually say that he went home and died. Some people are saying that the travel doesn't make sense because you have to travel 12 hours by train in order to get to a flight to then leave, right? So because of the kind of environment it is, you have to take the train out, which takes 12 hours, which you're dealing with there, I guess 12 hours by train. If you calculate, it's probably like 600 kilometers. You can turn that into miles if you want, but that's roughly what you would track on a train. So you're going that distance before you can get to airspace at which you can fly out by a plane, I guess. I'm not sure. Or a secure plane, some kind of like private jet of some description, some kind of secure airspace. Airspace where the stuff flying in there or the Russians are tracking it might appear to be targets. So people are saying that he could not get out of the country and back to where he was in the time he did. So that's what they're saying. Is that true? Well, I did some of the math. I can't say really that it couldn't be done, but it seems like it would probably, if that was exactly the method they were doing, then it seems like it would have been difficult. But I mean, he is a senator, a US senator. Since he has passed away, by the way, they have decided that most likely his sister will be appointed to fill a Senate seat, sources say. The red-headed librarian is saying the Senate is in dynastic monarchy, I guess, is a dynastic monarchy, i.e. a monarchy that's a dynasty, right, of like, it's a dynastic. So it's like a monarchy like in England. Now here's the question, and someone else raised this, I don't have it here, I think it might have been, no, it wasn't Glenn Greenwald. Someone raised the idea that if Lindsey Graham's seat can be exchanged for his sister, then the seat really means absolutely nothing, what you're voting for. Because, you can just exchange it for his sister, who knows nothing about probably the intricacies of Washington, D.C., and is not a political animal, okay, at all, apparently. So you can just have her sister have the job. So all they are is just a voting. They're just there in order to shop and vote for something. There must have been something calling when he went to Disneyland a few months back. Remember that? And he was pictured with the candy wand there at Disneyland. There must have been something calling him to the mouse, because at least he got to do that. I'm not sure how often he goes, but at least he got to do that when he was, when all this was going down. I'm sure when he talked about all the strike on Iran and all this thing was going down, he had a feeling that this could lead to World War III. So he went to Disneyland in order to do whatever he did in Disneyland. And he's got his wand there. The day after this photograph was taken and you went around TMZ and everywhere, he went on a gun shoot. He went out shooting, like with his gun, like there's some kind of masculine image. I don't know. Now, some people are saying that he was whacked. And they're saying who whacked him. Well, looking into it, and he was for selling jets to Turkey. Israel didn't like that, but he was Israel's biggest champion at the same time. I mean, enemies are everywhere for someone like that. You could have people that are losing millions of dollars a day just because the straits closed or open. And you are one of the people arguing for continuation of war in Iran. I mean, if you're looking for some kind of threat factor, it would be everywhere around that person. The Russians, the whoever. For all different types of reasons. You could even say, strangely, if it really is contentious with the intelligence communities and the blending of them in the United States, and him being one of the champions, and if the CIA really has this contentious relationship, who knows? I don't know. But, you could have all kinds of messages in what happened to him. But it also could be just a natural death. Could be wrong about the timing and the train. Maybe he didn't take the train. Maybe he took something else. Maybe he took a helicopter. I don't know. Maybe he got home. But he did have a history of heart disease. He had a stent put in a few years back, I think like 2021 or something. He did have coronary heart disease, okay? And it was an aortic dissection. And what that is the same thing that I believe killed the person from Three's Company and kills people all the time. It's called the silent something. There's a word for it, I don't know. I looked it up the other day when this happened and I heard about his heart disease. And aortic dissection is something which is very hard in order to diagnose and really find. Even though he has the best healthcare on probably planet Earth, it is still hard in order to track that this might happen, apparently. Again, I don't know what his level of healthcare was. You can have a huge level of healthcare and not be interested in actually engaging with that, right? It's not like you're standing there like Brian Johnson, who wants to live to be hundreds of years old, and having MRIs of your heart and all these kinds of scans and everything once a week to track everything. It could be a once a year kind of guy. It could be, once a month. But that's something, if it's true, and we have no idea what's true, right? Because, we just don't. Everything's a narrative. Everything's a limited hangout. But if that is true about, that's what killed him, then, it is going to happen. Now, people are asking the question that, who called the ambulance in the middle of the night if he was alone? I don't know if he called it, but someone else with him. He most likely was, as you would classically say, a homosexual or gay. Okay, there's many gay people. I am aware of that. It's not an anomaly. But with Lindsey Graham, this was not something that he would outwardly talk about or say or confirm. but a lot of people saying it's pretty plainly obvious. It's everything. It's in his demeanor. It's in a lot of things. It's still a guess, but that's what people are saying, and they say that there was a lot of footage of him being blackmailed. People releasing statements like this: just woke up to find Lindsey Graham is dead. Lol, they say. Most of you know him as the homophobic senator from South Carolina, but to me, he will always be the man who paid a Twinkie pre-transition college student a fat stack of cash to do the unspeakable things to him in a hotel room while he wore lingerie. Now, we don't know if any of this is true, but there are many stories like this with Lindsey Graham. It's kind of like those stories they had the credit card transactions of the individual who claimed to smoke crack with Barack Obama and then have sex with Barack Obama. You know, and these kinds of stories. It is a canon trans event to have far-right freaks bankrolling you and then turning around and voting against you. People love to judge us for it, but I never see them opening their wallets. Shout out to sex workers, they say, everywhere forced to dehumanize their enemies just to make rent. In a strange way, this is completely true. Because a lot of sex workers are probably, I'm guessing, left-leaning. And if they're having sex with the same people that take away, what they say is taking away things they desire or they want, because of course both parties or whatever paradigm you want have things they want, then it is a strange little arrangement, isn't it? You can read more of that on screen. They say that they had their student loans paid off because of that man. At the time, I had no idea who he was. That is what they are claiming. This was retweeted, of course, or put into a package there by Russia Today, because why not? By the way, Russia Today is blacklisted by Twitter. Right? You can go up to the top and type in Russia Today. Not all the time. I find that sometimes it'll show up, sometimes not. Sometimes it'll show up. Maybe it's got a rolling blacklist going on, so, So this is a transgender author who is talking about this. Jesse James Rose credits the late senator for having financial security and lack of student loans. Well, Lefty, threw you a solid. Here are some blowing up versions of that. Easier to read, I guess. So just so you can pause the screen and read them if you want. Whatever they're worth, of course, that is just hearsay. Now, before I go on, I have to play, because we're talking about The Wizard of Oz, that great scene again where they turn around. And look at how in sync they are. Now, I just did some research into Judy Garland. And I might have talked about this the other day, but I was doing some more research and to find out how the studio treated her. And this was a rough time, right? But done it. I mean, I cannot take anything away from this movie. It's brilliantly done. There's just a sense of play in it, a sense of like joy. But the studio, from the age of like 12 or 10 years old, because they wanted, Judy Garland was a studio creation from a child. As in, she was a sing and dance type of family, but when the studio captured her, what they did is they wanted to work long days, like 18-hour days. So they started feeding her, this is all alleged, I don't know if this has been confirmed, methamphetamine to keep her working for long hours. So she became addicted to methamphetamine, and then she couldn't fall to sleep properly at night. So she had to have barbiturates in order to fall asleep. So I was just thinking to myself in my mind, imagine, and maybe there's some people listening to that are in that cycle. It must be extremely difficult, because the methamphetamine keeps you awake, and of course for a long time then you crash, but to go to sleep at night, you're going to have barbiturates in order to knock you out, similar to what happened to Michael Jackson. Again, another suffering soul there. But so she could go to sleep, she had to take pills. Now, the kinds of pills she was taking, I looked them up. and done some research on them. And they're basically, you would only use them in emergency cases today, because there is, with these particular pills, if you just have a little dose which is too much, you stop breathing, right? So your dosage has to be, you know, and apparently what happened to her, because she did die of a barbiturate overdose, is people say that she might have taken an extra pill by accident, and of course she didn't wake up. She passed away at 47, right? So she was on methamphetamine from the studio and given barbiturates to go to sleep at night for all of those years. Now I feel blessed and lucky. Like, I suffer sleeping problems as I, wake up, I do some stuff, I go to sleep, I wake up again, but I don't need any pills to go to sleep. I usually just lay there and wait until sleep takes me, but actually, you know what I'm trying recently, for other reasons, but I've been reading a lot about transcendental meditation. Because I've been reading a lot about meditation. Now, I haven't kind of meditated before, and stillness exercises and stuff, but does anybody else do transcendental meditation? Let me know what you think in the comment section. But let's watch this again. Anyway, look at how in sync they are. And I love how they do this kind of robot walk.
To Oz?
To us.
We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. We hear he is the Wizard of Wiz, if ever a whiz there was. If ever a ever
I love that.
there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does.
Look at the timing, as I said the other day, of the horns when he keeps on falling and Dorothy keeps on picking him up. There is not anything within that combination which isn't unique when the Tin Man and the Lion comes, of how they treat and interact each other. That's called characterization. And you just don't see it in movies anymore, right? There isn't this kind of like, really, it's like an organic form of play, even if it's all scripted. It comes across really beautifully. And this is one thing I was thinking about. It's like that robot thing that they do. You don't see anybody that's like 85-year-old doing that, because the sense of play diminishes as you get older. Everyone knows that. That's why I'm not on the ground now with some, toy cars or whatever, like pretending to go up the wall, right? Because I've grown out of childhood. But there is a lot of these kind of innocent things that, like, they stick with us to a point, and they really kind of feel so human, right? It's a shame we lose that as we get older. Obviously, somebody that works in theatre probably hasn't lost that, right? They're full of these kind of playful... I'm not talking about someone who's like vocation is hanging out in musical theatre and 80 years old and form a dancer or a choreographer or, plays a piano. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about normal people aren't going to jump into some kind of robot thing at 75 or 80 years old when they're going down the road. But they do this little flurry right at the end of this dance, at which you can see every frame I show you, they are in sync, roughly in sync. Okay, they're not going to be directly in sync because it would look strange. Look at how their legs are crossed over. They're all in sync. Look at this. They do this little flurry, like she goes from this position to turn around her arms to move forward. He's pointed in that direction.
There was, if ever a whiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
She really could do it all, really, couldn't she? She could do all the singing and dancing. And of course, this is my favourite one. And look how in sync their legs are. Look at it. It's amazing. I mean, I know all dancers when they train can do this, but it just looks really good. Like he's picking up a basket in the middle of this. I mean, maybe it's because I'm so clumsy at stuff like this that when I see it, it's so impressive to me. But I just think it's kind of amazing. Let's just play this out and then we'll go to the next thing. Ready?
The wonderful Wizard of Oz. Here he is, the Wizard of a Wiz, if ever a whiz there was. If ever
I love that. As I say, when they point in one direction, then
Because of the wonderful things he does.
That's amazing. I don't think we can create that anymore. I mean, you look back at like Oz or something, and they did a remake with the sex pest James Franco. When they did that, the problem is when someone makes so many movies and they turn out to be like a sex pest like him, it's kind of sad because it wrecks all the movies' infamy. I can watch movies where the person was a drunk, got arrested, crashed their car, is crying underneath like in a Starbucks. I watch it. It doesn't worry me because that's the human condition, right? But if somebody is like, if you listen to the history of what he did, like kind of like orchestrating situations in order to sleep with his students and stuff, it's so kind of like, it's just so like. It's just so, it's whatever, right? It's like completely on every level. It's anyway. What doesn't matter to me if actors do drugs or get drunk or like do stupid stuff, but when they conspire over the course of a year and to take advantage and become predators on their students, that's like, it's like too much, man. Like, just, I can't see that person any other way again. So, I guess that's it in regarding the Wizard of Oz. I did have one more thing I was going to say, but I can't remember what it was. And I guess that will be the end of the Wizard of Oz clips for many years, maybe, because I don't have anything else to say on that subject. And here we are in intermission. So get your soda ready, whatever. And I remember many years ago, because apparently they've done away with intermission in movies and stuff. I remember in the 1980s, the early 80s, when I was a little kid, I'd be taken by my older sister to the movies. And, would ride our bicycles to the movie theater, and go into the movie theater, and you got the soft carpet. Remember the soft carpet? And the smell of popcorn? And that was the old popcorn where they didn't have that yellow chemical stuff that they put on it. There's a special chemical they use now in movie popcorn. This was literally like butter or something. And you get the popcorn and you go in and it's dark, and then halfway through the movie, what is it? Intermission time. You go up, you get your what did I used to get like these things called Jaffas in New Zealand, which is like, it's got chocolate and it's got this kind of like candy on the outside. And you get like a classic ice cream, which you have in New Zealand, which was, it's kind of like the ice creams you get from McDonald's, but then they have that chocolate over top of them that cracks. Do you know what I mean? And it's cold underneath and it leaks everywhere because then it starts turning into like milk. Unless you get the modern ice creams where you can put underneath hot water and they don't melt. What are they made out of? I don't know, plastic? But here's the thing. When I would go into the movie theater, right, they'd have the intermission and you go out. I don't see it anymore. Of course, there's no intermissions because they just try to pack as much sardines as they can in the movie theater. They probably figure like 3 intermissions is worth another movie ticket. So they calculate the numbers, and the concession stand starts to disappear. The intermission starts to disappear, and now you just have these things. And people ask, why don't people go to the movies anymore? Well, this is one of the reasons. It's not an experience anymore. Like me, I could sit in front of my TV at home and watch a movie. But it's just, what do I get out of it? I remember I used to go into the movie theater and like, I don't know, but like concessions and different treats and stuff like that at reasonable prices. Why don't people go to the movie theater anymore? You go in there and get some popcorn, and basically it's like $30 or something, right? As you get some, like, you get a drink and it's like $20. I don't know what it is. I have a friend in the States I was talking to the other day, and he was like, telling me about how he was upset with the prices of like everything there and going to the movie theater. It was just saying that everything's hyper expensive, and I was saying same in New Zealand. It's like you can't even go anywhere. I'm going to show you some prices in New Zealand candy in a moment because we're in intermission here. They might not have intermission, but I do, okay? Don't worry, we'll get on to the other stuff soon. I'm going to tell you about this candy, and then and then I've got a new section where an intermission where I'm going to talk about some of the things that I watched this week and I DNF'd, and some of the stuff I liked. And I'm not saying I watched the whole thing, but I'm ongoing in the watch list. One thing which I have found very strange here in New Zealand is the disappearance of chocolate peanuts. Now, I don't know where they've gone. I'm not, for the record, I'm not saying you cannot get chocolate peanuts in New Zealand. You can track them down and get them. But what I'm saying is, in general, they seem to have disappeared. It's probably because, I don't know actually why it is. Maybe people, I'm not sure, maybe they're too small and people choke on them. You can certainly still get chocolate almonds. Yeah. If you want to like mortgage your house or something, you probably can get a packet. But chocolate peanuts in general have disappeared, and especially those chocolate peanuts when I was thinking about the movie theatre they used to get back in the 80s. I used to like also to get chocolate peanuts. You know, there's peanuts with chocolate on them. It's not even complicated. You probably could just make them at home. Maybe, I don't know, but you probably could. But they are the greatest. Now you get these little packets. Now, a lot of these, this isn't New Zealand stuff, but here is a New Zealand supermarket. Okay. Happens to be a place where not so much these days, but I used to get some groceries delivered. I don't so much now because I have other alternatives. Here you can see some of the prices there. For 340 grams, it's $14. For some skinny dipped milk chocolate and salt peanuts. Now, I'm not talking about those kinds of peanuts, right? That are kind of like, I guess you would say, you know, like special kind of, I don't even know the word for it. It's kind of like, whatever. I'm talking about just the standard chocolate peanuts. $13. I mean, these are some fancy things, right? Obviously, M&Ms. I can never say that word. M and M. Can never say it. It's like a magical things on it, and I can't pronounce it. So you have all of these. These are in order of what came up under chocolate peanuts, and this was the next one that came up under chocolate peanuts. So that's everything. Of course, we have Reese's peanut butter cups, which are nice. Okay, don't get me wrong, but look, man, it's not for me, okay? I like them, but it's just like, I don't know. I like my chocolate peanuts, but there aren't any here. You get peanut brownies, you have peanut brownie biscuits, and then above that, which what I talked about was just the stuff here, which is mainly, slabs of chocolate. How much is that chocolate? Does it show on the other screenshot? $8 is that chocolate. Now that's New Zealand, so that's probably something around $5 US, something. You have to work it out. 1.7 New Zealand dollars to $1 US if you want to work out. I can't do them. I can never do the math on it. So not a lot of chocolate peanuts there, and one of the biggest supermarkets here, which is called New World Supermarket, which of course is I don't know, hundreds and thousands of chains across New Zealand or whatever it is. No chocolate peanuts anymore. What are we coming up to? 1 hour. How much more did I have after this? Nothing. I've got nothing after this. So okay, so here are some of the movies I watched. I'm going to tell you about The Furious. If you like Kung Fu movies, you might or might not like this. I grew up on Kung Fu movies as well, like 36 Chamber, so on and so forth. Love all that kind of stuff. Jet Li. Who was that other guy? There was another famous, he was a bit bigger, and he was a Chinese export to, Hong Kong export to New Zealand. Of course, Jet Li is Chinese. Yeah, they're good, but this movie, which is called The Furious, kind of has too much kung fu. It's like when I watched it, I had the DNF at like after 30 minutes. It's got just too much. It's like everyone's doing kung fu, but no one's using knives or, weapons or anything. Obviously, I see the irony in that. He's inside the octagon with a hammer, and I haven't gotten up to that part, but it was just too much. It was like, this has got too much kung fu in it. Right? And I wouldn't say I love it, but I really like that movie, Kung Fu Hustle. I think it's, when I first watched that, I really thought it was great. That had enough kung fu for me, but this has got too much. Everything's kung fu. I liked the story. The acting was good. I shouldn't say I liked the story. I liked the ideas in the story. But I think it needs like weapons, like, you know, him to have a hammer there and a knife, and like, why is he always like just tapping them? You know what I mean? If you're like, if people are trying to kill you and steal your daughter, why not actually use weapons that harm the people? Because it's always like hit on the hand with a can or something. It's just, it's very theatrical, which is fine, and it's probably other people's tastes, but wasn't mine. The Ghost in the Darkness. Now, I last watched this in the 1990s, and I thought that because an actual story I'm writing right now for my story collection, yes, I know I've still got to edit my novel. I am doing parts of that every day, get through it. But it's actually based in Africa. So I thought this would be an interesting movie to watch. I couldn't finish it. I watched it halfway and I go, I can't watch this anymore. It's so ridiculous, okay? Here's the ridiculous nature of it. Like the first time he shoots a lion and he kills the lion, he becomes a hero. The second time, a lion's literally eating one of the workers they pulled away, and he's sitting there. He can't load the gun. He's like, I'm aiming at him, but I hit the tree. Oh God, I can't see him. I've got to load. And then the other guy beside him is like, I can't load this gun. And it goes on for like 5 minutes while the lion is eating somebody. And they are literally, I would say, 20 feet from the lion with rifles. It's so ridiculous to me. I'm not like a hunter or anything anymore, but like when I used to clear, we used to clear land of rabbits with my dad, I can hit a moving rabbit. Like, you know, most people can do that if they do it enough and they're a trained shot, you know what I mean? And there is no way anybody in a million years could miss that lion from 20 feet. Look at the trees, and it's like a little twig. It's got no leaves on it, standing right beside you. The lion's looking at you in the eyes. If you have a literal line of eyesight on the lion, you can kill it. And that just went on and I just like, I'm turning this off. This is ridiculous. Then I turned it back on. And then the second part came where they made the cage. They trapped the lion inside this cage, which had a wall in it, where the people, this is at nighttime, were armed with, I think, 4 Indian men, all with rifles, that all they had to do was shoot through some bars to kill the lion, which was trapped in there, right? Like a giant trap that you'd use for, you see, if you do want to kill the animal, but they want to kill the animal, right? So I don't know why, but he could have just thrown. It's so the actual true story of this is the lions were killing the people. All you have to do is poison the meat, right? You actually put meat and you just lay it with some kind of poison or something like that. Just poison the lions, right? You make the traps. The lion eats the meat and it dies, right? You don't have to go hunting with the Maasai tribes people. I don't think that any of that kind of stuff actually happened in reality. It's based on a true story written by somebody building a railroad, and was killing, instead killed all these people, and they say, oh, it's true. I looked into it. I don't know, where's the evidence it's true, apart from somebody who said it's true in a book. And then it became an urban legend. It's about these 2 lions that killed like 40 people on the railroad. In this story, they say it's like 50, 100 people the lions killed or whatever it is. In reality, according to the story, it's like 20. Okay, so first of all, the kinds of traps you would use is you would use just meat with poison in it. And you just poison the lions, right? And you might say other animals and stuff like that, where you can work out a perimeter, you can work out something which would mean only the lion can actually get to that particular meat, right? For instance, I could think of a mechanism, but okay, so they have that trap, and then you have these Indian people with their rifles. I'm trying to load the rifle. Remember, this story is based in 1897 or something. It's not like you're going to be all using flint action rifles, right? And then like pack the powder. I'm going to put it's just stupid. Not that they were using that, but they're like, I can't load this. How am I? She's like standing there right in front. How am I going to load this rifle? And then they're all pointing and they keep on shooting and hitting the bars. And then after 5 minutes, okay, I said, that's enough. Turned it off. It's so ridiculous. It's like something you watch in the 90s when you're younger and it makes sense, and then you watch it in an adult and all it is logical flaws. The whole thing is just full of flaws, right? First of all, why don't they're building a bridge and they're saying they're going to build a fence line. Why don't they build like lookout posts, right? You know, that sequence the place that they're building, and everybody there, you know, out of the hundreds of people there, they pick people that, and they do have people that were in the army to go up on those posts and work as, you know, like Overwatch or something. But I would have just poisoned the animal. I would just poison the lions. That's what I would have done. Right? No mercy for man-eaters. The next thing I watched is a couple of episodes, the first season of The Rockford Files, and I thought it was pretty good. Mind you, I like old TV shows. And James Garner, of course, he's great on screen. People like to watch James Garner, and they doing this, and I thought it was good. And what I also thought was it's such a departure from Stephen J. Cannell's later work like The A-Team. What else did he do? Well, he did Renegade, but, you know, you include that, which are very kind of like, they almost feel like they're written for children playing with like He-Man figurines, right? Don't get me wrong, I had an A-Team lunchbox when I was like 8 years old, right? I'm old school A-Team, right? But watching A-Team as an adult, and I have recently, I think last year, you can see why it's just really kind of like very basic kind of storytelling. It's like you go back and watch Knight Rider, and Knight Rider's like, I don't know, made for 5-year-olds or something. When you watch it, you're just like, it doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. I'm not saying it's not enjoyable, but what I'm saying is that it's not like the Rockford Files. So you can see the difference between Stephen J. Cannell early there when he gets to let his hair out, and later on when he's, I think, creating for more of a TV formula. Like, this has actually got interesting, is an interesting character. It's unique. I think it's the first case I've seen of the detective that lives on the beach, you know, in the trailer, which again is, you know, later on in Lethal Weapon or whatever, you have Riggs, is his name Riggs or whatever, in that role, which, you know, made Mel Gibson, or am I mixing them up? So here's something I watched and I did enjoy, and it was called Duel. And of course, everyone's probably heard of this. This is one of the directorial debuts of a major movie by Steven Spielberg. And it is pretty good. I really enjoyed it, actually. I thought that it was done really well. It makes me want to watch more kind of highway chase. And there is one that's called... it's got Kurt Russell in it. It was like 1998 where they were on the highway and his wife was kidnapped or something. So I got a copy of that. And I probably am going to watch that next. Later tonight, after I do some editing on my novel. But there is something I enjoyed, so if you haven't seen that, if it was an interesting movie. I won't say it'll blow your mind. It's just about a car and truck. But it's over the years, because obviously I've been aware of this movie for years, but I've never seen it. I always thought it was some kind of just stupid, like just stupid movie. But actually, it's an interesting movie. Like, when you watch it, it's interesting. And a lot of that is because Steven Spielberg knows how to make small shots and things like that interesting. He knows how to make what's on screen interesting constantly. He's a master of that. And early Spielberg, long before Jaws, long before Close Encounters. And it was written by Richard Matheson. Now, Richard Matheson, as you are aware... You might not be aware, or you might be aware, because he's passed on now. And he is he's written so many things. For instance, I've got some of his bibliography here, like some of it. The Legend of Hill House, the Night Stalker teleplay. That was, the Night Stalker TV series came later. Duel, obviously, the one from there. The Omega Man, which was the precursor. It's I Am Legion. I Am Legion was the novel he wrote, which of course is a reference to, just a reference to him being the monster at the end. I won't get into too much here, but. And that became the Omega Man, and then later on, obviously, whatever. And that really is the earliest example in a novel of the kind of one man versus the world of monsters. Okay, so there are other ones where it's one man in an empty world, but that one is one of them, basically a zombie novel, but they are actually vampires in the novel who can talk, by the way. So they're not exactly zombies, but it's kind of like that zombie in the world thing where you have to kind of like, you're alone and you have to take care of yourself, and then through the day you get to scavenge because all the zombies or the vampires are asleep. So also Button in the Twilight Zone he did. The Incredible Shrinking Man, I believe he did that, although I could be mistaken. No, he did do that, I'm pretty sure. And, a whole bunch of other stuff which, is not on the particular list here, but he did a lot of stuff. And great author, one of the most, some people say is one of the most interesting Twilight Zone episodes, Button. I think it's an interesting episode. I wouldn't say that it's one of my favorite. It's interesting though. Of course, it was made into a really, really, really bad movie. Strangely by the director of Donnie Darko. And Donnie Darko was a well-made movie, I thought. And then they went and made Button, which of course, it's a shame because I think that they had a really interesting take on the world and I would like to have seen more movies from them, but when one of your movies bombs that bad, I don't think you get second chances, not with millions of dollars anyway. So, whatever. So there's Richard Matheson, the late and great Richard Matheson. I did try to make some yogurt, some Greek yogurt. It didn't turn out too good. And that's because if you're in New Zealand, I don't have it here actually. But I got this well, if you're in New Zealand, you'll know what this brand is. It's called Anchor Protein Plus. It's got that bacteria in it that's good for you. And it's Greek yogurt vanilla bean. And when I was eating it, I couldn't stop eating it. It's been so many years since I'd ever eaten any kind of yogurt. And when I was eating it, it was like my body needed it really bad and it couldn't stop. And I ate the whole thing. It was a strange thing. It just couldn't stop. It was like my body really needed the calcium or something. It really wanted it. So, yeah, I was eating that and I really liked it. And then I thought, it's so expensive, I'm going to have to try to make my own. And Experiment was a big failure. It came out like yogurt. Yeah, it's like yogurt. You've actually got to put it through this cheesecloth or something to make it thicker, but largely it just, I can tell, it's kind of just something I'll probably buy once a month. My Experiment didn't work. It's strange because I do drink like milk now. Now I'm not on a plant-based diet. I do drink milk I do my glass of my hot drink, which I told people about. Which is milk, which is 1 teaspoon of sugar, brown sugar, and hot water, a little bit of hot water, mix it up, and then a few splashes of milk, and it creates like a caramel drink, which is just basically sweetened milk, which is, as I said before, one of the oldest drinks in the world, although it doesn't have a name apart from being called sweetened milk. There are some things in Arabic, I think. I'm not Arabic myself, but so. Anyway, I was drinking milk, so I'm not sure why when I had that yogurt, it was like my body needed it so bad. Because I had been drinking milk, so I was getting calcium. But when I had that yogurt, I just couldn't stop eating it. The whole thing was gone, and it was a kilo. Or what was, 1,000 grams. A big tub of it. Okay. If you're in America, you have to work that out. I don't know what that is in pounds. Be like 2 pounds or something. Wait, no. So anyway, that's what happened. But if you wanted to learn how to make it, I made it in a thermos, which is just like, you know, saying that you put a hot drink in. And you can do that. And here are some of the instructions that this lady talks about in this video right here on YouTube called Making Yogurt in a Flask or Thermos. And it worked. I don't think it's as good as a yogurt maker, but it worked. It held the heat for like 8 hours, long enough for the reaction with the bacteria and stuff to take place to make yogurt. I don't think it was pleasant. It was very nice yogurt, but it certainly wasn't the same as the stuff bought from the store. And again, if you're in New Zealand, it's called Anchor Protein Plus Vanilla Bean Greek Yogurt. So if you're in the United States, you just want, I guess, vanilla bean Greek yogurt. But the problem is that I've eaten a number of vanilla bean Greek yogurts before. All of them were actually quite very nice. But that one was much nicer than the others. I don't know why it wasn't as sour. So I don't know. Not that I mind the sour thing. So here we go with this video here. Let me just blow this up a bit so you can see it. So they've started putting locks on refrigerators, on milk.
Look at this. You gotta press for help just to get something out of it. Oh my God, y'all so trifling. Y'all the reason for everything.
That's wild.
Y'all see this? Oh my God.
That's just wild. That's just
See, he ain't even clipped this one back on. Now the people, oh my God. See, now they ain't do that one back, but look. What?
So I was thinking of Japan. Obviously, this is in all neighborhoods in the States, but in Japan, high trust society, you probably will never have that. But no one trusts anybody anymore. Here is Frank Wright, who's a rising star there in the UK. Yesterday, Rupert Lau spoke of the powerful, maligned influence of the Fabian Society. The symbol is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Today, at Mass, the gospel warns, beware of false prophets who come to you in clothing of sheep, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. That's why in the Mandela effect, why it seems so strange to me, that passage about the lion shall lay down with the wolf. But whatever. Anyway, the Fabian Society, I just thought I'd point this out because this person's a well-known political influencer. Now they rose from a video which was taken by them, if you like them or not. But people are talking about secret societies now, like the Fabian Society. Soon it'll be the Knights of Malta or whatever, right? And obviously they're talking about the influence here of these societies, and they all have huge amounts of influence, all these secret societies, because of course if you act in a clandestine way, as Game Logic has shown, of course that's a famous paper coming out of Russia regarding wolves in villages. Game Logic shows that people who operate in secret together always have a massive advantage over the other people around them because they're acting in concert. That's why secret societies, things like that, are formed, to invoke influence in society. So here you go. Here is what people are calling an idiot. Dudes posting their wins says, this photographer captured a once-in-a-lifetime shot of a grizzly bear in Alaska. 1.8 million views. First of all, well, let's take a look at it and then I'll give you my opinion. Here he is. He's getting a shot. Look at him. And there's what came out. So people were saying, first of all, what people were saying is that all this for a horribly stylized, almost AI looking pic, come on. And that's what it looks like, right? It looks ridiculous. It looks like nothing like the actual photo. I'll leave it there for a second longer. Nothing like the actual photo at all. Then we got the bear's eyes. And they got the sun coming over the mountains like that. Let's have a look at this. So there is that shot. And here is what he apparently took. We can get to it. There. So he took something along, like, he's saying, alluding to the fact he took something along there, where it's pointed in that direction, right, I guess. And it came out like that. Well, first of all, 1.8 million views. Is it real? Look at his hands. Look at the face in the background there, how mutated it is. Look at the fact the clip is 18 seconds. If it's real, this person's an idiot, right? An idiotic individual who's not only responsible to get themselves killed, but like a lot of idiots, they'll get the other people killed around them. Because you don't go up to a grizzly bear like that and get that close and do that kind of stuff. They'll eat you. As shown in Grizzly Man, documented historically, when this individual went and took his girlfriend to go stay out in the with grizzly bears, and they both ended up in the belly of the bear. That's why in America, historically, you needed to carry a gun. If you're out in the wilderness, you need to carry a gun with you, right? If you come across something like that. Like, what would actually stop that thing? I wonder if you shot it, like with a shotgun, if it would actually stop it. I mean, it would damage it, but would it? I mean, look at how thick it is and stuff. Obviously, a shotgun will go through a lot, but you need like a real rifle, right? Like one of those. What are they? The one that they say Tyler Robinson fired. I forgot I've got a clip from that. I forgot to include it. Yeah, I forgot to include it in this day's video. It's the clip. They found to cut a long story short, they found a bullet on another roof. No, I mean an unspent, like not a casing, an actual round sitting on a roof. From who? Well, first of all, no one's going to leave a round on a roof. And as other people explained, if you're a police officer, well, actually it was Valhalla TV, that Green Beret guy that has a YouTube channel and he's an expert on all those things and trains police officers. He says it's not going to be from a police officer because a police officer, running a sniper rifle, it's just just framing it, says I'd never leave a round anywhere because it'd have their fingerprints on it because you're not going to do that. It's not like, and he trains police officers. So whose round is that from? I don't know, but anyway, in regarding this bear, my opinion is all of this is AI. You know, this morphed hand and like all the morphine and stuff like that. By the way, what is his phone taking a photo of there? Like, what is that phone? It doesn't matter anyway. If you're wondering what this is, it was just talking about meaningful architecture works gain their value not merely within an art historical chain of isolated artistic achievements, but as an integral part of social urban architectural context. Modernism has so far merely achieved to replace, at enormous ecological cost, established traditional languages without incomplete inventories of raw spare parts assembled into an ill-fitting and temporarily geographic arrangements. I can simplify that kind of like speak for you. Okay. Modern architecture is just all about straight angular lines, right? Straight angular lines because it works off a basis of minimalism. Well, actually, what they say is efficiency, right? If you're getting the materials for saying they're all cut into these shapes because they're easily placed in there, and they are efficient in a lot of different ways. But the problem is they don't look nice. They just look like square boxes, and of course they'll put some finishing on the outside or whatever, but you're never going to get something beautiful like these roofs and little turrets and little, stuff like that. You're just never going to get that. I mean, this is something which looks it looks aesthetically pleasing to humans. It looks like Christmas. Right, if I make a Christmas card and I was an illustrator, I wouldn't put like a like a square, grey, white, modernistic, modern, postmodernistic building there, which looks like something which you would, I don't know, make drones inside of. Or, what is that? It's just a square, it's just a functional warehouse. And all the walls are white, and everything's perfect, and everything all the windows are all kind of like, yeah, I get it. Doesn't look like anyone lives in here, right? Anyway, whatever. What are we up to? 4. Well, that's it. I'm up to 1 hour and 30 minutes. And that's it for today's video. And that's it, and I will see you all later. Oh, I do have this outro. Have a listen to the outro, a little bit of the old classic. Little bit of the old Reed Wonder there. He's having some big hits with his music over on his channel. Go check it out. Like The Machine, etc. and stuff like that. In the meantime, I will catch you all later.